Welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here to talk about the business of being an author. Self-publishing, publishing, marketing as a traditionally published author, publishing as an indie author. We kind of cover everything here, anything that might affect publishing or marketing for any author. We do meet every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. You're welcome to join us live by going to newshelves.com/FAF. And you can also watch replays over on New Shelves Books, which is just youtube.com/New Shelves Books. We have a couple of questions that were emailed in that we are going to be answering, and then we'll answer questions live. So one of the first questions we have is from Virginia, and Virginia says, after several years of doing ads on Facebook and after promos on Fussy Librarian and the like for discount and free promos, my sales have plummeted and these venues aren't working any longer. Not sure what to do. I've tried Amazon ads, even took courses on them, but I end up just spending money with no return. What kind of ideas do you have? So this is something that happens to a lot of authors in books. And usually when this happens, there's two things that typically, not always, but two things that are typically going on. If you have ads and if you have marketing that's working well and then it stops, very often either A, you're not writing any new releases, meaning that you are marketing older books, but you're not putting out fresh content. And what can happen is that essentially your author pages go stale. You don't have new things to talk about on social media. Your Amazon algorithms are not showing that you're a active author with new things. So your algorithms there can kind of suffer. And your audience is, you're constantly having to find a new audience because we've already tapped the audience that's read through your backlist or your catalog. So that's one of the things I would consider is that if your sales are kind of falling off, when's the last time you put out new content? If you put out new content, was it in the same genre of what was selling well? Did you skip around and hop around genres? Because that's like starting from scratch, and sometimes what worked before will not work then, among other things. Now, the other thing I would consider is that if you've done marketing that's worked well and you have put out new content recently, your ads might simply be going stale. If you've been doing discount or free promotions, let's say you're doing them quarterly. Every 3 months, you're doing a free promotion through Free Booksy, or you're doing a Fussy Librarian for 99-cent book. You've kind of worn out the market. Even if you're doing it every 6 months, keep in mind that these places are continually building their list of readers to email. You probably already reached some of these people. And if you've been doing it for several years, they've seen your book, sometimes the same book, over and over for years. It's going to get less effective over time. If that's the case, I would encourage you to start looking for new discount newsletter places to promote to. Maybe you're going to find some that are smaller, but they're less expensive, and try them out. Maybe when you're doing a free promotion, you're going to try a different type of ad. I just was working with someone who ran into this, where they kind of had fatigue of those discount promotions and download lists that had been working well for them. So what we did is we did a free promotion, but instead of putting it in those discount lists, we ran a BookBub ad. Not a BookBub featured deal. Those are the ones you have to submit for and be approved for. But we ran a BookBub ad, an ad where we could target other authors very specifically who write books like them. We ran an ad on BookBub just for the free days. And we targeted that list, and we very specifically kind of made the genre apparent. We said what it was and how it tied in. And we put that it was, free to download. We did that and we actually got a nice little bump. Now, is it as big as we were getting in the beginning with those free download lists? It was not. I think they got somewhere around 100 downloads, where in the beginning we were doing free promos through like bigger lists. We were getting probably 1,800 downloads. So it was much smaller. However, I'll tell you, our book club ad, we only spent about $5. We had a $25 budget, but we had it based on cost per click. And so we got some nice exposure, but we only spent about $5. So for $5, this author has a new outlet to kind of market and get a nice little bump. And this is something that can be done as long as they can target the same authors a few times, but it's best to vary and try to find different groups of authors if you're going to do this kind of thing regularly. Now, keep in mind that as far as BookBub ads go, BookBub ads perform best when a book is discounted, the ebook. Typically, if you're doing a free 99 cents, maybe a 1.99 ebook, BookBub ads can work for you for a short-term period. I do not recommend them long term. They tend to be more expensive and they don't tend to work well long term. And if you don't have a discount book that is really, really discounted, then it just doesn't work very well. So I would consider that when you're kind of looking at whether or not this tactic will work for you. But my point here is just kind of saying it's time to start looking for new outlets. It's time to realize that you might have fatigued out your list and you just need to do something new. So if that's the case, start thinking of where you can reach people. I've had authors start to research and say, hey, my genre is really hanging out on Reddit. My genre is really hanging out in Facebook groups. Facebook groups, you can't just go in and spam them and tell them you've got a book. You have to integrate, you have to discuss, you have to actually be a part of things. And so that's one of the things to consider, that maybe you're going to have to spend more time on social media for your marketing rather than doing other things if you want to go that outlet. And so I think you have to decide what you're still willing to put into it and what other outlets you have. The other thing about fatigue is you can also get ad fatigue. If you have had ads that have been running really well on Facebook for a couple years, and now you're kind of saying this is not working anymore, you may need new creative. You may need to stop your ad and start a new ad. You may need to actually recreate your old targeted list if you've targeted your audience. It maybe Facebook is no longer allowing certain targets, and maybe you need to update your audience so that you can reach new people or more people. Maybe there's better targeting available in some areas and some aren't available anymore. So ad fatigue is very real, as well as audience fatigue. And the things you can do about it are to give them something new to read or to change things up. Those would be my suggestions if you're really feeling stuck. And if you've tried those and you're still feeling stuck, then I would consider again whether or not what you're doing is still working. Should you maybe start a new series? Should you try a standalone? Sometimes, if you've got a really long series, watch your conversion. At minimum, we want to see 30% conversion from book to book to book, from front to back. We want a 30% conversion minimum. If it's less than that, you have serious problems with your book. There's something, they're either not finishing the book that the conversion lacks on, you're not setting up the next book well enough, the connection, the marketing to your existing customer, something. There are some serious problems there. But ideally, we want 50% or above for your conversion from book to book if you're doing a series. It's a little bit harder when you're doing standalones, but for series especially, at least a 50% conversion if you actually want a successful series that is, has potential for profit and sales. So look at the data, look at your audience, look at the data, look at whether or not you're giving your reader what they want, and if there's something else you can offer them or something new that you can write. And then of course there's always the question of, do you want to? Did you write the book or series that was in your heart and now you're like, yeah, it was kind of more like a hobby. It was like, skiing. I wanted to go skiing, so I got skis and I did all the things and it was fun for 2 years, but now I don't think I want to ski anymore. Sometimes that's it for authors, and that is okay. Author can be part of who you are. It does not have to be your identity. But if you are treating being an author as a publisher as a business, we all have to get up and go to work. So in that sense, you have to treat it a little bit differently. What do I mean by conversion? What I mean by conversion is how many people are going from buying and reading book 1 to reading book 2. How many people from buying and reading book 2 are going to read book 3? So what is our conversion from book to book, and what is our conversion from the series? If I have a 10-book series, how many people through data and tracking can I see that typically are going to buy book 1 and read all the way to book 10? How many people who buy book 1 are going to buy book 2? And some of the easiest ways to kind of find your conversion if you do have a series is going to be look at your data. Look at your data from when your books have been out. I like to look at the last 90 days. The current year and the last year is typically what I look at. So if I'm looking at that, I would go to 90-day data and I would be looking at how many people, like, pull your 90-day report. I do this. If you're on Kindle Unlimited, you need to be looking at the KENP report as well as the orders. If you're not on Kindle Unlimited, it's just the orders. That's important to know. And so I would be pulling a report and I would be looking at orders, for example, for the last 90 days. If 50 people bought book 1 in the last 90 days and only 10 bought book 2, that's not a good sign. That is like 20% conversion. I should have picked easier numbers. So it's not very good. Like, we are seeing that only 1 out of 5 people is going to order the next book. That's not good conversion. We really want at least half of those people. So if we have 50 orders, we want 25 orders for book 2. And that's kind of what we're looking at. Now, this is why I say I look multiple times and ways. Look at the last 90 days. But maybe the conversion's all out of whack because you did a book promo or you released a new book or whatever it is. So then look at the last 90 days. Look at the current year to date. How many people, how many page reads do you have on Kindle Unlimited? If you have 10,000 page reads for book 1 and 1,000 for book 2, and they've both been out for the entire year, we have a conversion problem. And then we look at last year. So we're looking at as much data as possible. And you can do this between multiple books, one book, book 1 to book 2 and that kind of thing. And if you have a series, as you're looking at this conversion, sometimes you'll see great conversion from book 1 to book 2, great conversion from book 2 to book 3. And then after book 3, suddenly it plummets. And book 3 to book 4, you lose your conversion. And this happens. When that happens, it's time to take a look at your book. There are a couple of reasons why things don't convert. Number 1, people didn't finish the book. They got disinterested and didn't finish the book that came before the conversion drop. So if you have a drop from book 1 to book 2, maybe they didn't finish book 2 because they got bored, or it's not what they expected, or it's not what they thought they were buying or reading. That's one reason. Another reason, which is kind of ironic, I will admit, another reason why we see conversion drop sometimes is book 1 was too satisfying at the end. You wrapped it up in a little bow, you gave us a pretty little package, and we're happy. We feel complete and content. What didn't happen is there was no setups or stakes for book 2. So I have no push to go on and buy or read the next book in series. And this one frustrates authors because they're like, I gave them a good ending. And yeah, you did, but it was too good. I'm not saying you have to end every book on a cliffhanger, but I am saying that if you don't have to end a book on a cliffhanger. There's a lot of controversial ideas on whether or not cliffhangers are acceptable. But what I am saying is you do have to build up what's coming next. You have to build up that something else is coming down the pipeline, or you have to set up, if you've got a series that features different characters, you have to kind of bring that to the forefront at the end, that this other character that you've grown to love now has their own story to tell. You've got to give us a reason to go to book 2. And then the other reason that we sometimes see from book 1 to book 2, or just book to book, is, again, sometimes they don't finish book 1. Sometimes they were too satisfied, and sometimes they read it. It was fine. They didn't love it. And so they didn't go on to spend more of their time in their series. So sometimes that happens as well. It's very close to book 1, except for sometimes you'll get reviews. Sometimes people say, oh, the book was good. So you're getting which leaves you very confused on why no one's buying book two. It was fine, but it wasn't worth spending my money, my time on for more hours for more of that series. And that happens sometimes. And the fourth reason, you stopped marketing. Many times, especially if there's a long period between book one and book two, sometimes what we see is that if there's 2 years between book one and book two, unless you've been marketing the entire time and list building and social media and doing the things to connect with your audience, they have forgotten about you. My friend, they have forgotten about you after 6 months unless you've kept in touch. So you're kind of starting from scratch. And I tell this to authors all the time. It's okay to release one book a year, but you have got to maintain your marketing. You launch, you have this big movement, you market for about 6 months, and they're like, all right, well, I got to write the next book, so I'm not going to do that anymore. Or, it's not as exciting anymore, or whatever it may be. And you stop marketing. People forget about you. And then you have to start all over marketing book one when book two comes out to build your audience up again. So I do see that quite a bit of the time as well. Let's see. Why wouldn't cliffhangers be acceptable? Kevin, are you opening up a can of worms? Some people don't mind cliffhangers because it's exciting. It makes you want to go grab the next book. Some people feel cheated by cliffhangers. They feel like you didn't give them a full book. They feel like it was a dirty sales tactic. And honestly, it is a sales tactic most of the time. And some people unapologetically do it. There are a couple authors that I read. I know every book will be in a cliffhanger. It just shall be. Actually, sometimes what I do is I don't even read the last chapter because I'm like, just save that last chapter for when the next book comes out. Or those authors, I very often will wait until an entire series is out until I read them. So it can change reader behavior. It can make people very angry and some people just don't care. But I'll tell you what, as a marketing tactic, as getting people to read through a series, it does tend to work if the stakes are high enough. But it is controversial. Who knew? I grew up on on nighttime soap, so I love cliffhangers. Maybe that's where it came from. We had this, I was homeschooled, so I was home during the day. We had the sweetest neighbor who lived across the street, and bless that woman, her husband was in the Navy, so he was gone a lot. And she would always, my brother, me, I was always over her house. And she's probably 10 years older than me, and she taught me how to crochet. And I remember sitting at her on she had a chair, there was a couch, and she had a young daughter that I'd babysit and play with. And I remember sitting on that couch, learning how to cross stitch, watching Days of Our Lives every day, which I was definitely not allowed to watch Days of Our Lives at my house. So maybe that's why I don't mind those cliffhangers either. Anyway, that was funny. All right, let's see. Make sure I don't have any questions about that one. Okay, I think that ends the question about that one. So those are my ideas as far as, how to renew your audience, look at audience fatigue, look at your conversion, and go back to the data. The data doesn't lie. Sometimes people get very frustrated when I say you have to try things to see if they'll work because they're like, why? I just want to know what works. The problem is every book is different, every author is different, series is different. So there are some standards of what usually works, but until you try it and you have the data to analyze, no one knows if it's going to work for you. No one can guarantee. So you need the data. You've got to try things and then you've got to read the data to see how you can and should move forward. Let's see. I'm planning to contact an agent. The agent says, quote, tell us about your project and a little about yourself. If we think we can be of help, we will get back to you for some pages. Should a blurb about my book be what they are looking for? On a general description of what the book is about. Not sure what they want. That is that is very general. Usually an agent will specifically say what they want. Send me your first 10 pages in a Word document. Send me, send me your pitch and your cover letter. They specifically lay out what they want. If they want a synopsis, if they want your hook. Because this seems more loose, I would not be sending any documents. I would not be sending 10 pages. I would be sending kind of just like your query letter is what it sounds like. It sounds like a very informal way of saying send me your query letter. Your query letter typically introduces you as the author. It tells me about your book, and then it says why I think, why it would be a good fit for us to work together. It's essentially an introduction saying, hi, I think that we'd be great together. Here's why. Here's what I'm bringing to the table. Can we be friends? And so that sounds like what it is. I would be going for a traditional query letter if it were me. Let's see. I'm going to write two more of a 5-book series. Once this is completed, is the series considered old then? It depends on the first book in series. So usually when we think about if a series is old or dated, we look at the first book in the series. And sometimes if the series takes really long to write, by the time the last book is out, the first book looks dated. If you have a strong following all along the way, that's not typically a problem. But if the book hasn't sold well thus far, I would consider why not? There might be bigger problems at play that you need to consider. And if you don't have a following, if you don't have readers and reviews, we're always marketing book one. And if book one is looking dated and it's from 10 years ago, then that might be a problem. Yes. Cheryl, I have that to discuss, and I'll bring that up probably in a couple of minutes. Let's see. For my children's series, Amazon has reduced the price of the first one, and that one is still the best seller. Should the price of the other ones be reduced as well? Nope. Nope. So what is happening is that you have set your print price at a certain amount. Amazon, seeing that they can make profit off of you because it's selling, has discounted that book. So I often will compare this to like a grocery store. A grocery store gets in a bunch of grapes and they're like, man, these grapes are in season. They're going like hotcakes for grapes. And so instead of selling them for $9.99 a pound, we're going to sell them for $7.99 a pound. It is the grocery store who takes the financial hit. They lower their profits, but they're betting that they can sell more, get them off their warehouse, whatever it may be. And that's all Amazon is doing. So Amazon is offering a store discount to buyers. Live it up, embrace it. Let people know on your social media or when you're marketing that, hey, Amazon's currently running a sale and discounting the book. But I in no way would reduce the price of your other books to match that. If people find you on that discounted book and they're like, this is it, this series is awesome, they will happily go and pay the regular price. It's typically not that far off, but even if it is, your list price is your list price, and we don't match Amazon. Amazon as a store can always offer discounts, just like a bookstore can or anything like that. So we don't match it though. Let's see. Should I change my keywords for this for my last novel, which is number 3 in a series? It has serious in the news, fentanyl connections. And should you change it? I don't know. I mean, I think that has to do with what your story is. Remember, more important than what's trending, what's hot, what's not, is that those keywords are true to your story. So you want to have keywords that are true to your story and trending, true to your story in your genre. I can't answer that for you, unfortunately, without, working together on your book. But I think that's something that you can look at and ask yourself, is this currently, is this the right tie? Now, I will say that what I personally have fentanyl as a keyword, if my book was not specifically like a nonfiction about drug abuse or something like that, I would not. Now, would I possibly have something like main character drug addiction or addiction struggles, something like that? I might have that, but I wouldn't specifically have fentanyl in keywords for a fiction book typically. Um, but also that is a topic that can get touchy, so you have to handle that with some thought as well. But again, I haven't read your book, so I can't specifically go into that. Let's see. All right. I know I had another email question. Let me go back to that. I got Virginia's question. Wanted to answer Carol Ann's question. Carol Ann's question is, what problems and solutions might I face when I move to the UAE? My small press publishing company is registered here in the US. I haven't launched it yet. Now I'm planning on moving to the UAE and marrying. My prospective husband is supportive and encouraging. Financially, he'll back me up when needed. Any advice about appealing to a worldwide market? So I'm going to just say some things generally about moving a business, but also I'll address the UAE a little bit specifically. So when you're moving a business, there are absolutely things you have to consider. For example, I just moved from one state to the other. I actually had to move my business address from one state to the other. I no longer have a physical address in New York. I'm now in Virginia. Now I can apply to have an out of state license, meaning there's like some special word for it. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. This is general information that you can look up and research for yourself. But I had to have a special license or a special permission that I had to pay for to keep my New York business registered in New York while I'm living in Virginia. Now, that's what I did for a quick fix. Eventually, I'm not going to keep my business in New York probably because taxes and other things aren't as advantageous in other places. So I'll have to move that. So when you're moving from state to state, keep in mind that there are different rules about where you can license, how you can license, and what it will cost you to license in other states other than your primary residence or the primary location of that business. So if you are setting up your publishing company as a LLC, as a business, whatever it is, that's something to consider. And the same is true if you are setting up a business and moving overseas somewhere. So those are things you need to look for. You really should probably consider reaching out to like a CPA or a business lawyer for that kind of advice. Again, I'm not giving financial or legal advice on this one. Um, but those are some of the things that you absolutely have to consider when you're moving. The other things that I would consider as far as moving from one place to the other is that it can affect your marketing. For example, if you plan on using TikTok marketing, TikTok really heavily drives based on your location. So if you are in the UAE and your main audience is in the US for your book, then when you're doing things like TikTok, guess what? It's really hard to get seen over in the US. Some people have gotten around it by having assistants in the States who post their social media content, a VPN, different things like that. But that certainly affects it. And it's not just for TikTok, just TikTok is one of the most well known that drives algorithms that way. So you have to consider that when you are, posting things from one place, it may not show up in the other. The other thing is that not as much within the US, but if we're talking countries, um, different things are appropriate in different places and some are not so appropriate. So you have to consider things like, are you going to market yourself locally or not? If so, then you have to make sure that you're paying attention to the customs of that place. You have to make sure that you're paying attention to social norms and things like that. And even, I think I've said this before, I work with an author who's published by Penguin in the UK, and she has a American publisher in the US. Her books have to be updated because guess what? In the UK, some of the language that they use in the book is not socially acceptable here. She smokes in the UK. Guess what? When she comes to the US, she ditches the cigarettes because it's not as socially acceptable here. So there are things to consider that if you're writing for an audience, sometimes you can write for a global audience and it just works naturally. But many times there are little adjustments made for each area. And so you have to consider that and also consider who your true market is. If you're writing US historical fiction, guess what? Your biggest market is in the US. You might get some readers elsewhere, but your biggest market is going to be in the US. And so you have to consider that. You have to write more for an American market. So there are things beyond just the business and actually talking about what you're publishing, how you're publishing that you have to consider as far as reaching a global market, even if it's all English speaking. Things to consider also, are you doing translations or not doing translations? The other thing specific to books is you have to consider copyright. Where are you filing for copyright? Do you need to file for copyright where you're physically located as well as where you're publishing? Also ties into where your business is, where your business license is. Is it the US or is it elsewhere? Same thing for ISBNs. Are you a US resident? If so, and if your business is in the US, you need to get ISBNs. If you are in Canada and you're a Canadian resident and then you can actually apply for free ISBNs through the Canadian government. If you are in the UK and you're a UK resident, guess what? You have to go through Nielsen. Not the same as Bowker, which is tied to Nielsen. They're different. We like to make it complicated. So you need to know those kinds of things. It's not only where's your business being located and licensed at, where you are physically pushing things from and where you're physically marketing things. And are you going to market in person or only online? And also where you, as the author, are registered, where you're a citizen, and how that will work out. So those are just a few of the things that I would be considering if I was in your situation. But again, I think your best bet would absolutely to be reaching out to a business lawyer and to a CPA who may be more versed in these things. I promise you, they are much smarter than me. They can probably even do math. Which is a highlight when you're a CPA, or so I hear from my CPA, who laughs at me, and it's fine because he does great work. All right, let's see. Now there is this question from Cheryl about Spotify and this find a way email that's been set out. What's going on and how do we look at it? So I'm going to share with you. Hang on, because I know it's on. There's a whole little blog about it. Oops, not that one. Hang on. I'll get there eventually, slowly. Oops. I can get away with not being great at math, but when I can't type, that's when I start to get in trouble. All right. I will pull up the blog for anyone who would like to see it. I will drop it in the chat if you'd like that, but I will pull up the blog so you can see that. And then I will describe what this means, why it matters. All right, I'm gonna drop it in the chat. Step one. Now I'm gonna share my screen so you can see it. Okay. If you have an audiobook and if you have your audiobook wide through Findaway Voices, you have probably recently gotten an email from Findaway saying, hey, look, now we're not Findaway, we're Spotify and in audio, and we have different names now. So this is not too surprising. Spotify bought Findaway Voices a while ago. And so now Spotify is kind of changing, doing their own branding and shifting their name. The actual distribution is not going to change that very much to my understanding. But yes, now we will have, instead of Findaway Voices as the front face, we will have Spotify separated by in audio. And there's this whole thing saying we're very excited. Our goal at Spotify is to bring our partners powerful tools, blah, blah, blah. They're saying why it's wonderful. And so they acquired Findaway Voices, which I mentioned. And then they're kind of talking about that. And then the next chapter, and they're saying that we're transitioning our audiobook distribution services for retailers other than Spotify. So Spotify is now going to be its own upload, it sounds like. If you'd like to be on Spotify, you will now be given access as a publisher, as an author, to upload your books directly to Spotify, just like many of us already do directly to ACX for Audible. Then instead of Findaway Voices, they will have In Audio. And In Audio is a new company dedicated to fostering wide audiobook distribution ecosystems. It's basically the same thing as Findaway. And so it's very similar to Findaway. It's called In Audio. And what they're doing is they're converting your Findaway account, all your data, all your files, your books, they're just converting them to In Audio. You don't have to do anything crazy here. Now, this will take effect August 1st, 2025. If for some reason this is not okay with you, you don't want to do this, you can pull your books out of Findaway Voices prior to August 1st, and you will have no problem. You can go to Authors Republic, or you can go exclusive to Audible. You have options. But this is their announcement 3 months ahead of time so that you know it's coming. And so there's a fact here where, they talk about what will happen, will it happen? And it essentially says, and it says right here, Spotify will automatically transfer voices by In Audio, and your content will remain available everywhere that it is today. So your content's not moving. If you don't do anything, they're going to transfer things right over, and you'll have, instead of Findaway Voices, you'll be using In Audio. Differently, also, if your books are currently published through Findaway Voices, they'll continue to be available on Spotify after August 1st. However, to manage your catalog, to do all the things on Spotify, you have to create a Spotify publisher account. That's important. If you want access to your book, you have to create a publisher account. Now, I did this with a client, Chris, yesterday. When you go, you create a publisher account, and then you actually see all of the authors that are, published, their audiobooks are published. So if you're a small publisher, you get a publisher account, and then you invite your authors and they all create their own author account. It is actually pretty cool. It gives you data as far as, what your audience looks like if they're listening on Spotify. Your reader reports and your sales reports for Spotify show up there. It does give us more access. It allows you as an author to create a profile, kind of like Author Central. I don't see a ton of promotion opportunities through that platform yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they roll them out later. So I do think this gives us a lot of opportunity. The downside that I can see as far as Spotify is concerned and having to now upload is that you're having another upload, you're having another account. So if your books are wide and you're uploading directly to ACX for Audible, non-exclusive, and then you're uploading to Spotify for Spotify, and then you're uploading to In Audio for wide distribution to Overdrive and Hoopla and all of those places, you have more accounts. It's can be a little frustrating. It's a little bit more like when we're doing our other books. So it's more accounts to keep track of. But the tools that we're getting so far, I am excited to see. And then as far as, everything will manage the same. It does say, well, I need to create a new account for Voices by Audio. And it says, no, your login credentials for Findaway Voices will remain the same. They're kind of just keeping it where it's at. So it's not as big of a change as it may sound. The way that it's presented, I think, could be a little confusing and overwhelming. But essentially, if you like what's going on, you leave everything the same. The only thing I would say, log in, get your Spotify account, and get that going so you can use those tools. If for whatever reason you do not like this, then you have until August 1st to pull your books out. Yes. So if it's after August 1st, if it's prior to August 1st, your books will automatically transfer over to Spotify. If it's after August 1st, you will physically have to upload new audiobooks to Spotify. So it just depends on timing. You can go claim your Spotify publisher and author accounts now. You don't have to wait for that. Like that's currently available and accessible. So no need to wait. Let's see. My book was published by She Writes Press. Do they need to go on Spotify and link all of their authors with audiobooks on Spotify, or can I go on as the publisher? If you were published by She Writes Press and they are distributing your audiobook, then they are the publisher. So they can or should be able to give you access. Now, they may not be using Findaway Voices. They may be using another distribution channel, but they should be able to give you access. And I also believe, actually, the next question. Findaway users. So if you're on Findaway, you automatically can do Spotify for authors. I'm not sure if authors can just go claim a profile at this time. I think they have to be invited by a publisher. So as the publisher, I believe that She Writes Press should be able to say, yep, you're the author of this book and invite you to Spotify. Um, I'm not certain, but I believe that's how it is for books published in that way. And it could change in the future, but you can certainly ask the questions and they should know more knowing, how they specifically distribute their audiobooks. I have only non-fiction books. So to continue Spotify distribution, I need to create a publisher account for Traction Books, then add myself as the author. Exactly right. Actually, I did this with Chris yesterday. When I was setting up the account or screen sharing, he was watching. When I was setting up the account, I initially set it up as his email, as his author. And then they're like, okay, here's the publisher account. Do you want to invite your authors? And it's got his name. And I was like, oh, I did that wrong. So when you're initially setting up the account, I would create that account as the publisher and then invite yourself as the author. That way, if you ever do end up publishing multiple people, anything like that, also that's what you have to do to claim the author profile and have all the fun little tools, and it may affect availability and tools later in the future. So yes, when you're creating your account as the publisher, I would create as the publisher, the Spotify account, and then you invite yourself as the author. You will need 2 different email addresses for this. Again, a little bit of a downside to have so many accounts, but I'm hoping that it will be more tools. One of the things we've talked about is that one of the things we've talked about with audiobooks in particular is that there's not a lot of marketing access for audiobooks, right? If a book is on Audible, it's connected to your Amazon sales page. So whatever you're doing to market kind of benefits that side of it. If you're running Amazon ads, you can use audiobook keywords and kind of get people over there, but you can't specifically market the audiobook. We have Chirp Books, which is like BookBub, but for audiobooks that you can apply for audio. But of course, you can't just do it. It's an application process. They have started adding some ad opportunities for authors, but you have to pay for it. So opportunities, but it's different. Other than that, of course, you can run social media ads to audio and different things, but it's much harder. Honestly, there are not built-in platforms for audiobook marketing as much as there are for other formats of books. So I am hopeful that this will provide more opportunity. And honestly, Spotify as a company known for liking to make money, I can't believe that they would not want to dip in to the opportunity of earning more money through advertising dollars. And self-published authors or indie authors are very motivated to market themselves, meaning they're paying money into the system. I believe I've said before that Amazon makes more money on advertising than they do on all of their subscription services combined. Audible, Kindle Unlimited, Prime, all of those combined make less than advertising dollars for Amazon. So while we use ads, and if we use them well, they can help us, Amazon's also making a killing on them. I can't imagine that Spotify as a company, if they are passing this opportunity by, I'm just going to put out to the universe that, their people can call my people, and I'm happy to discuss with them about how this can make them a lot of money. But I can't see why they would want to work in some tools that would earn them money, benefit their users, and create new opportunity. So hopefully that's what's coming down the line, but we'll see. Yeah, so that's kind of that update. And again, some people are like, oh, I'm pulling things. This is crazy. I actually saw a couple posts saying, why is Spotify involved in Find Away Voices? Well, they bought Spotify a long time ago. This is not new. So that part's not new. It's really just kind of how they're logging in that's different. So, all right. And that was like the big piece of industry news. The other thing I'll mention, just because I know we have a lot of people here who use Publisher Rocket. If you do use Publisher Rocket, which is Dave Cheson's, what am I trying to say? Dave Cheson's, um, his tool that helps you find categories and keywords and all of those things. If you use Publisher Rocket, and I know many of you do, they have just rolled out a big update that's really meant to help you work in multiple markets, or make your book more viable in multiple markets. My brain, I'm trying to like type and think at the same time, and my brain's like, no, ma'am. I don't accept this. So Publisher Rocket had a big update that now includes multiple markets. It used to just be US, Germany, and UK. However, they have just added Canada, Australia, Italy, France, and Spain. So if you publish books in these markets, Publisher Rocket now has tools that can help specifically in those markets. And then the other thing to consider is that if you are actually looking for a wide ranging marketing and opportunity, like we just talked about, when you set up your metadata, you don't often think about each platform, Amazon US, Amazon UK, Canada, Australia, Italy, they all get the same metadata. However, their platforms are slightly different. The markets are slightly different. So your keywords that you're using in the US might actually be telling Canada that your categories should be different, and they change your categories. If you've ever gone onto your book in multiple countries and you see like your categories are completely different and things, not all categories are available the same in every country. And so sometimes Amazon Canada is taking our US data and going, I think it should be in this category. So these new tools are really meant to help you if you are hoping for wider spread metadata help and in hope of sales and organic search. These tools are really meant to help include those places as well as the US so that you're getting more visibility worldwide. It is available if you have Publisher Rocket. One of the things I love about it is that you get every update. You do not have to pay for updates. You pay for a license agreement, and then you get every update. Like I got this program a really long time ago. I actually needed help with my account or my license not that long ago. And they're like, we can't even find you. And I'm like, wait, I saved these emails and I sent it. And they were like, oh, you've been here for a long time. And I was like, yes, I have. Um, I did not pay. I mean, this is still a very, very inexpensive program. It's very inexpensive for what it does. I don't know the exact price right now, but whatever it is, it's a little less expensive. It actually says right now it's on a deal of the day for $199 for lifetime access. So go check that out. It's usually $299. I didn't even know. But I have had it for years and years, and I get every update, everything that's changed. I mean, it was Kindle Rocket when I got it. Now it's Publisher Rocket. It's got all these new tools and things. So I really do appreciate that Dave and his team, when they sell you that piece of licensing, they give you all of the updates that come with it. It's not something you have to update yearly or anything like that. So I have always been a big supporter of the program and continue to be. And if you have it, there are more tools available. So make sure you go and update it. You do have to update it. And then check it out, especially if you're looking for a wider distribution. Lynn is saying she thinks it was like $50 when she got it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There are perks of being around for a really long time. Anyway. Highly recommended, updated tools. It sounds very exciting. I've just barely, stepped at it and played a little bit with it. But it's something that I'm excited for and I think can certainly help people outside of the US who are trying to market their books as well. So go check it out. And we're at 11 o'clock. So I think that's a good place to end. Thank you guys for being here. I will be back next week, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can join me live at newshelf.com/FAF. Or you can also email in your questions if you can't make it live. It's just info@newshelves.com. I'll save those up. I'll answer them on Fridays, and then you can watch the live stream replay or you can watch it over on YouTube. Thanks for being here, guys. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.